Welcome everyone to episode 7 of All Across Canada, brought to you by Mayflower Sports. We're your hosts, Neil and Brett. We're coming to you after a large break. We've seen the first 2 weeks of the PLL season, and we're excited to recap them for you, as well as react to the finish of the college NCAA finals and some NLL news. So let's get into it, Brett.
Let's do it. It's good to be back.
So first 2 weeks, kind of going how we thought they would based on our last podcast where we ranked the off seasons. We had, Archers, Redwoods near the top, and we thought Cannon's Water Dogs would surprisingly not be near the bottom, and we had concerns about Chaos and Chrome, and that's kind of how the standings are after 2 weekends.
Yeah, pretty much bang on with a lot of our analysis there. I know there was that article that was on PLL.com that they said the Water Dogs won the offseason, and Neil, you said the same thing. And I thought the Archers won the offseason, and they're at the top of the standing. So just, firing on all cylinders are over here.
It's nice to get some reassurance. So we're gonna keep rolling with it, and maybe we'll make some bolder takes now. You never know.
Well, we'll just make the takes that are there. I'm not gonna reach for a bold take. Over one that I know is gonna be right.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Wait for your pitch.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was a good start. Hot start. Couple big standouts for me. I don't know about you, Neil, if you had a couple things that you noticed right away, but number one, I'm going to say the biggest takeaway for me is, like we said on the show as well, like TD Erlin is for real. And that was such a huge get for the Redwoods, especially in week 1. Week 2, they had a bit of a slower week, but week 1, right away, dominance at the face-off X.
Yeah, he's leading the league in face-off percentage right now. And it's just, it was expected. Like, he's been that dominant, but super cool to see. And you can just tell, like, the Redwoods teammates, like, are just loving him already, too. So that was super cool. One thing that I kind of took away from the first 2 weeks that I don't think we talked about enough, when we kind of covered the Atlas rebuild, we said, okay, this does not work. They're right to blow it up. It'll be good for the Atlas. Could be good for them soon. It'll definitely be good for them long term. But I thought Rob Pennell fitting on the Woods was a nice fit, but Pennell, Brown, and Rabil, who I was the most concerned about of the three, are all excelling with their new teams.
I was going to say,
just flat out amazing with their new teams.
Yeah, one of my big standouts was like Paul Rabil looks like he's back in his prime. He almost looks like he's like re-energized. He's back in that old Cannons colors, that logo, and he just looks re-energized. And he was amazing through the first 2 weeks. Just looks incredible out there.
Yes, I read a stat, and Paul Rabil, like, through his career, like, he was the most effective when he was receiving a pass and then going on a dodge. And when he was with the Atlas, he wasn't doing that. It was more so he was starting with a dodge, and it just didn't work. So
no one was doing that with them.
Yeah. So they just got him back to like a role that works for him, feeding it to him, and then letting him he is just a bull. Like, he's a force. So if he's coming in with speed and he can dish, like, it's pretty dangerous if you use him that way. So yeah, he was kind of my surprise that it really turned on. But it's good to see that the Cans already have what feels like a winning culture. And they really try to achieve that, bringing a lot of the Boston Cannons guys over, but adding Rabil to that as their leadership, was maybe a little questionable after his struggling season, but paying off for them huge. And he looks really good on the Cannons.
Yeah. The Cannons look a lot better to start their expansion than the Water Dogs did a year ago. They just seem faster, seem like more of a complete team, and there's a big weekend, like almost 2 weeks for the Cannons, right? Like, they started out hot, they took a couple teams by surprise. Rabil's goal got on to Sports Center top 10. He's dating like Aisha Gonzalez now.
Yeah, he's back. He's got his mojo.
he's into his mojo now. Yeah, everything's coming up Rabil, it seems, right
Yeah.
now.
Well,
PLL's doing well.
yeah. Well, what the Water Dogs didn't have the luxury of is a star like Lyle Thompson, and like he's been
Yeah,
as advertised, and he's near the top of the league in scoring already, and just being everything for them. Of they need a goal, go to him.
yeah, he was one of the best players in the world, and they were so lucky to get him for him to even be available like in year 3 and not already have been in the league.
Yeah,
Yeah, just incredible.
they took the Whip Snakes to overtime this weekend, which is a huge
Yeah.
shock for the team that had the best defense of all time last year in the bubble. For an expansion team to take them to overtime and almost win, like that was an incredible game. As much as we praise Rabil, Pennell is actually like putting up more points, and he just fits in so well. And especially with Henningberg being back on the Woods, their offense just looks way better, and everyone just fits better into their slot. I thought nothing against Miles Jones last year. I thought he was great, but he looks even better this year. Just with all those guys kind of complementing each other so well. So I really like the Woods offense right now, and how Jules and Pennell fit into it.
Yeah, not having Jules last year for the Woods was a huge loss. Like he was the most obvious missing piece for them in the bubble. Like they had a great defense, but offensively they just missed what he brings. And he does pair so well with Pennell. And then you put Kavanaugh or Garnsey on the other as the other element of the attack there, and then you got Perk and Miles Jones at the top, and it's a dynamic offense. Like there's a lot of different ways that they can beat you, and with Pennell like being the player that he is, and he's definitely, like I said, like Rabil, kind of being like the player we've seen him be before, as opposed to what he was a year ago with Atlas. He's kind of back to his old like MLL days where he's just so dynamic and he did everything for this team. Anything that was asked him, he could do it. And now he's like adapted kind of into that new role, like he said he wanted to do. And it's really, 2 weeks into the season, it's working out so far.
Yeah, it fits well with Jules because on the Atlas, it was, okay, you are going to start every play for us. And now it's a kind of, all right, who are you going to prioritize? Is it Henningberg or is it Pennell? And then it just creates the opportunity. And then Pennell has it, he can take it, or he can give it up to all the other Woods players. So that is just a great fit. And then week 1, Ryan Brown on the Water Dogs was not really didn't really have the production that I was expecting and how they were planning on using him. And then week 2 was exactly what I envisioned him on the team. He had 8 goals through 2 games, and he was just finishing everything for them. And then the Water Dogs, they have a great identity, and now they have that finisher, and he's just fitting in so nicely. He's the guy that puts the ball in the net. And on the Atlas, it didn't make sense. You have the best shooter in the league who doesn't get a lot of shots, and here it's okay. No, he's the guy we're looking to finish every play, and it looked so good in week 2, but took a week to get it into practice.
Yeah, that's definitely a bit of a tire pump for you, because as soon as we made that trade, you called right away. Oh, this is going to be a guy who's going to finish everything for them. Like I remember you called that one right away, and yeah, he is the shooter that the Water Dogs needed, and he's looked great for them so far. So far, I think those trades have worked out really well for all the teams involved. I mean, even the Atlas, like they got a big surprise win over the Redwoods, so they look like a different team. And all the 3 players that they moved on from, with at least the ones they traded that we mentioned, are all seem to love their new situations, and it's really working out for them. So it's really good to see that this kind of worked out for everybody.
And I'd add another player, obviously not in the Atlas trade kind of grouping, but Marcus Holman is another guy that struggled last year in the bubble and has come out with a whole new confidence and attitude, and he's putting the ball in the net and making plays. And for those 4 guys, what it seems like is, field lacrosse has never been on a stage this big. And if you're a star and you underperform, like it must just be so motivating knowing I'm on the biggest stage I've ever been on in my career, and I'm not living up to the standard that I have for myself. So all these guys have, come back to their old selves, come back to the new level, and I think that has something to do with it.
Oh, definitely. Like the growth of the game. It's like when you play lacrosse, like, I mean, you can speak to this as well. I mean, like you don't typically play in front of like the packed house. And then when you do, it's so much more like, all right, here we go. Like, and then you want to do well in that moment, right? Because it's what everybody wants, right? Everybody wants to play in front of the packed crowd at the biggest games, and you want to do well in those games if you're a competitor. And I would imagine everybody in the league is, and that's exactly like the bounce back we've seen from him this season has been so far been impressive. Obviously only 2 weeks in, but like he looks like he's on pace for a strong season.
And you mentioned the Atlas there to go to their side of things on those offseason moves. Unfortunately, Jeff Teat, their first overall pick, hasn't been able to play yet, just with the travel restrictions. But they've gotten a lot of guys come through, finishing their college seasons. And Jake Caraway, who was a second-round pick for them, after watching him in the NCAA playoffs and this weekend with the Atlas, he is an absolute baller. Like, has so much confidence and deserves to. And he was carried his, not to say carry, but was just a shining spot on his Georgetown team and brought them so far in the playoffs. And then coming out on the Atlas, just firing on all cylinders and putting a lot of goals in for them. So I've kind of been surprised by him.
Caraway reminds me of kind of like that quarterback or that wide receiver from like college football who played for like a good team, but he didn't have, like, if he's a wide receiver, he didn't have the best quarterback, so he didn't put up unreal numbers. And then he gets to the NFL, like a Devontae Adams type, where he wasn't the best in college and he was like, second round pick, and then he just becomes one of the best players. Not saying that Caraway is one of the best players, but he definitely has the potential to become a big time name in the sport. And you're right. Like, yeah, a kid with a lot of confidence, like, he's fun to watch, and college lacrosse is fun to watch. And when guys get really fired up and excited, it just makes it better. And it was good to see him have a good start to his career. Mac O'Keefe, another big name, he had a good start. First couple of weeks, got a bunch of big time goals. So it's good to see these young guys step in right away.
Yeah, and we'll get into the college finals in a little bit. But any other teams that kind of stood out to you? Chaos there, 0 for 3. We mentioned at the top of the show that they were a team we thought might have some struggles. Anything you see from them?
They haven't been, struggling too bad. Like, they haven't really been blown out of the water yet. They've just had a couple games where they haven't really been clicking, if that makes sense. Like, they lost to the Whips pretty bad, but that's almost to be expected. And then they had a close game with the Water Dogs, so they could, easily be, 1-2, and then they lost to the. So they've played the two best teams in the league and have lost, but not in a completely blowout fashion. And then the tough game of the Water Dogs, so they could easily be climbing the ladder as we go throughout the season. They've had a tough start to the schedule, that's for sure, but they don't look like one of the top teams right now.
And something that I kind of stuck out to me was with the Cannons and how strong that they've looked. Our kind of concern with them was it's so hard to build a defense as an expansion team because no one's willing to give those guys away. But Brody Merrill just killing father time like he's Tom Brady. And he's leading the league in caused turnovers right now. It's a 40-plus-year-old. And, he got taken in an expansion draft past 2 years because he's up there in age. But he's just so dominant. And, it's such a pleasure to watch him. He's the Nicholas Lidstrom of field lacrosse right now. He's so good that there's just no decline and, so smart, so skilled. So he's just playing amazing. And Jack Kilty, he's a rookie, has been really good. So he stepped up very nicely, and Cannon's definitely needed a defenseman to step up, and Jake Pulver stepped up as well. So their defense is looking strong too, not just their offense.
Yeah, they look pretty well rounded, especially as an expansion team. Definitely more so than a lot of people thought, I would imagine, going into their inaugural season in the league. But yeah, no, they're gonna surprise a lot of teams. Like when you look at this roster, like it's up and down talent everywhere. They've had a lot of guys who've really, really stood out, like Andrew Q. He's had a big time start to his season. Like you said, Jack Kilty, rookie. It's always good to see guys like that step up, right? Because Jack Kilty, like, he literally just finished his college season at Notre Dame. Was one of the best defensive players in the country there. So I'm not surprised to see him translate that back into the pro game at all.
And the Archers, they had the highest score differential in the league right now. They've been balling.
Oh my God, have they ever? They beat the Atlas 18-6 in their first game. They came out just firing. And it's like we said when we were breaking down their off seasons, like they had the most dynamic offense last year, like ball movement and just guys who could score. And then they go ahead and add Connor Fields, who's an all-world player. They're just so good offensively that they're trying to they're like sometimes it kind of like you say you've compared them to the Maple Leafs before. It's like they're trying to be like the old Maple Leafs, or they're trying to win every game like by just outscoring you. And that could come back to bite them, but so far they've looked really, really good.
Yeah, man. Like I think that was the old Archers, and I think what we're seeing is a huge step up. Like they improved their defense so much that they're a whole new team now, and like they're coming for the crown. And I think the one area that didn't really get addressed, that people were kind of questioning the Archers on, is they had two 50% face-off guys. One of them got taken, so now they have one serviceable face-off guy in a league where there's 6 superstars at the position in a team of league of 8 teams, and that's not haunting them at all. And Jared Connors, who was their first overall pick, he is an absolute ground ball machine, and they haven't used him too much on the face-off, but that is a huge addition to their face-off group as well. So, Gittleman in the first game broke a save percentage record. That was their other kind of maybe they could upgrade there. They just look great at all positions right now, and like they're having a time. Like Will Manny is scoring goals, like quick sticking from like 20 yards out and like waving in people's faces, and like they're having fun right now. So hopefully they don't run into some struggles and lose their confidence a bit. But I think they've looked more dominant than anyone for sure.
It seems like to start this season, like on most teams, maybe Chrome and Chaos, you could probably argue the opposite. But most of these guys, like almost everybody, is outperforming what they did even a year ago. And even if they had an amazing season, like everybody seems like their game is like at the next level right now. Like everybody just seems better than we've seen them either ever before or in a long time.
Yeah, and with the Archers, like the first week, I think Brian McNamara, like a newer depth scorer, was leading the way. And with them, like it's the opposite of the Atlas of like, oh, they have so many stars, and like you're worried it's not going to work. Like anybody is like, oh, who's going to be they're like getting excited of who's going to be the guy that scores for us this time. Like they don't even know. Like the other team doesn't know, but they know they're going to be moving the ball around and sharing it so well that somebody's going to get an open look.
Yeah, not to make another like football reference, but when Alabama at wide receiver had Henry Ruggs, Devonta Smith, Jerry Jeudy, and Jalen Waddle. Like, they would literally like rock, paper, scissors in the huddle to see who was going to get the fly route, and then they would throw them and get a touchdown. It literally seems like that's what the Archers are doing. It's like, who's going to score this time? Okay, I'm going to get this one now. And then, okay, yeah, you go get it. And then they just score.
Yeah.
Yeah. Juggernaut offense.
Absolutely. And Chrome struggles. You know, they've had some injuries. Unfortunately, Randy Stats, who's going to be a huge addition for them, is hurt. So not the start they wanted, but things could turn around soon too.
Yeah, tough start for them for sure. But, I mean, another roster that has a ton of talent. They just got to find a way to start clicking here.
And finally, Whip Snakes, the class of the league. Anything you saw from them the first 2 weeks? Make them look a little human, maybe?
Yeah, the game against the Cannons, you know, taking them to overtime, kind of. Well, that's not to take anything away from the Cannons, because like that's a statement game for them, even though it's a bit of a loss. It's a loss, not a bit of a loss. It is a loss, but it's a statement game, right? Like, we're here, we're new, we're competing with the best team in the league, and I'm not gonna say they look human, but they don't look any different than they've looked. Like I said, some of these other guys have seemed like everyone's taking a step up. They look the same. They look just as good as they've been before, but they almost seem like they could take another like level up, and I'm sure they will when everybody starts clicking. But I mean, Rambo looked good week 1, so as long as he's rolling, then they'll be fine.
All right. With that said, let's get into our PLL pick'em. So if you have been checking out the Premier Lacrosse League website at all, they've been running a pick'em series, and unfortunately, we didn't get a podcast on to show our first couple picks. But going forward, we'll be making our picks and then seeing how we do as we record weekly now during the season. So game 1 next weekend, we have Whip Snakes and Atlas. Who are you taking there?
Oh, Whips. For sure, taking the Whips.
Yeah. It didn't even have to ask you. PLL pick'em fan picks, 94% compared to 6%. This would be probably the biggest talent gap in terms of team and fan picking that we'll see. So pretty easy one there, but could be a huge upset. We'll see. And game 2, we have Redwoods Chaos. This could be a closer one of the harder ones. And I think we're both on the same page, thinking Redwoods keep it rolling and Chaos keeps their struggles.
Yep. Roll Woods.
So game 3, Archers Water Dogs.
I'm gonna tough not to go with the Archers. That's for sure. They've looked phenomenal. They're the top of the league. Going with the Archers.
Yeah, no, I'm not taking an Archers upset anytime soon. And Atlas Cannons.
See, this is a tougher one, but the fans are pretty much in agreement that the Cannons will beat the Atlas. The new Rabils will beat the old Rabils.
Yeah, I think Atlas, as much as they had a really good week upsetting Redwoods, I think they're going to have some growing pains still. And I think Cannons are just clicking a little early, so we'll ride with the Cannons. And game 5, and we have the Whip Snakes and the Chrome.
So this one's a little bit interesting to me because it's Whip Snakes back-to-back, and so far these teams that have played twice in one weekend, the second game has been a little tougher for them. But I think that the Whips are going to take care of business again against Chrome.
Yeah, I agree as well. So, both have the same picks and no upset picks taken this weekend. We're sticking with the favorites. So check in next week and see how we did.
It'll be 5 for 5. So, spoiler alert.
All right.
No, 0 for 5 now that we said that.
Yeah, we'll see. Let's get into some NLL news then.
Lots of NLL news to discuss. they're coming back and dropping news left, right, and center, and of course it was all during our hiatus too. So
biggest news for me, NLL team headed to Vegas 2022. Pretty excited about that. Vegas Golden Knights are playing tonight in the conference finals against the Canadians. So that's been like a super fun sports market. So I'm excited that lacrosse is tapping into that. What are your thoughts?
I love the move. Obviously, more expansion teams is never a bad thing. We've seen in the last like 3 or 4 years they've been popping up expansion teams like crazy, and with good solid owners too, like Joseph Tsai, who owns the San Diego Seals. He got permission to own 2 teams, which was always like a point of debate because he had wanted to own 2 teams for a while. And now he's allowed. So moving to, or not even moving, a new team to Vegas for the 2022-2023 season. I'm super excited because we've seen how Vegas treats their sports teams. The Knights do really well. The Raiders are getting a good reception to their move, and this is big. Like, this is a big market for lacrosse. It's not one that we've seen them really tap into in a long time. So I'm very excited. And it's prefaced at the top, they've been dropping the ball on some of these new names, but Vegas, you got a lot of good options there where you don't need to overthink it and ruin it.
Could be
Just saying, preface at the top. It's don't overthink it. Just go with your gut. Pick something that's not trademarked, and don't overcomplicate it.
And we also have an expansion draft for the NLL coming up for Panther City. So they have to submit the rosters tomorrow, and then June 29th, it's going to be the NLL expansion draft. So listen to the coming episodes, and we'll cover that as well.
Yeah, obviously more details will come about the rosters and like how many guys are allowed to be protected. It'll be, I believe it's going to be the same as what the New York and Rochester and Philadelphia expansion drafts have gone like. So it'll be about 10 protected players per team, varying positions, but more details will come out when the protected lists go tomorrow, and we'll break some of those down and talk about them some more. But yeah, that's super exciting news because we're finally going to get to see what kind of team they're going to shape out to be.
And then the other NLL news that happened was they had their Hall of Fame class for 2021, and looking at the list, like it is all the stars of like a generation that was playing when we were pretty young, like Colin Doyle, Kevin Finneran, John Grant Jr., Pat McCready, Casey Powell, Reggie Thorpe, Steve Toll, Sean Williams, referee Bill Fox, referee Roy Condon, but just some absolute icons in that list.
Yeah, the NLL doesn't do a Hall of Fame class every year. It's about every 5-6 years, and like even the list of names for the nominees that comes out, that was about 20 guys long, and then nothing against those other guys, but the cream does rise to the top, and some of these guys, like Neil said, icons, like truly just the faces of the sport for the entire time that we were both playing minor. Colin Doyle and John Grant Jr. and Casey Powell were the face of the league, like my entire youth growing up. Colin Doyle is my favorite player of all time. I grew up in Hamilton, and a Toronto Rock fan. He's such a nice guy. And he's like the headliner of the class and everything. And John Grant Jr. is a prolific goal scorer and absolute icon of lacrosse. So some huge names there. Some big congratulations for some incredible careers and everything they've done for the sport. It's really nice to see like all those guys get recognized. One name in particular that stood out to me was Sean Williams. He's an Ironman. He has the NLL record for consecutive games played. He's known as the Ironman for Toronto, Buffalo, and Rochester. So congrats to him as well. Like that's another, he's a fantastic player, and he never missed any games. He was tough as nails and very deserving of that honor as well.
For those of you that have seen Matt Rambo, lead the Whip Snakes the last 2 years, like John Grant Jr. is his comparison of just like a guy who just scores so many goals and just leads his team offensively with being like a heavier guy, just leaning into people. So it's cool to see these stars kind of like reappear in different players too in their playing styles.
Yeah, it's a good diverse list of different positions. No goalie this time around, but that doesn't mean there's not one out there that's deserving. It just only elect so many to the Hall of Fame, and next time around, I bet you will see one of these goalies come. But yeah, good diverse group of positions from, playmakers, goal scorers, transition guys, stay-at-home D guys. And it's cool to see some of the names too, like Reggie Thorpe. He's big in the coaching now. Like he's the head coach of New York. He's been a head coach in junior, and he's been a head coach in the MLL as well. So really good to see him get that recognition.
Yeah, and like we talked about earlier, Steve Toll is going to be assistant coach with Panther City. So a lot of these guys are not going anywhere and still contributing to lacrosse. So you mentioned Hamilton there, obviously Colin Doyle, former captain of the Toronto Rock, and you've been giving me some credit for some of my picks. I got to give you some credit. Brett Bob McKenzie McGuire, me and the insider that Toronto Rock was moving to Hamilton. And if you follow our All Lacrosse Canada Instagram page, Brett runs that and was one of the first people to point that out, to keep your eye on that relocation, and it happened the next day. So tell us what it's like to be an NLL insider.
Well, when you're from Hamilton, it's pretty easy to get news about stuff going on in Hamilton. That's one of the main benefits, is like people will reach out and ask you about it, or people will be talking about it. Like, so growing up in Hamilton, like we had the Hamilton Bulldogs, like, and we still do, but they were the AHL, now they're the OHL. So we've always had a facility and like a good sports base, and there was always like some talk of Hamilton getting an NLL team. Like it was always like a kind of a in the background. We did have an MLL team for a few years, the Hamilton Nationals. So there was that like pro lacrosse pipeline. And we heard some kind of rumblings about it. Like I didn't know it was going to be Toronto moving. They're just relocating for 5 years because we can get more into the details of it after I explain this. But so basically, yeah, I'd heard that there was potentially going to be some movement with the team, and then a couple people kind of reached out and asked if I had heard. I did some digging on the internet, and I found out that their Wikipedia page had changed, and there had been some news releases that were accidentally released too early and then pulled back, and got my hands on some of them. So I found enough information where I felt comfortable putting it out with our social media attached to it. And it ended up very next day coming to fruition there. So it was kind of cool. Like, obviously, not to say to be ahead of it, but it was cool to be tracking it like live as it was happening. But it's good for Hamilton lacrosse for sure. A lot of really good, dedicated people in Hamilton lacrosse that are now going to get the support from an NLL organization, the same kind of way that the Thunderbirds have been supporting in Halifax, which is nice. And they're still going to be called the Toronto Rock, even though they're playing in Hamilton. They're just relocating to Hamilton to play at First Ontario Centre for 5 years, because it's more affordable than paying to play in Toronto at the Scotiabank Arena, because of, obviously it's downtown Toronto, and there's other benefits that come with it too. So at First Ontario Centre, the Rock are going to have, they're going to be second or maybe even first in line to pick dates for home games. Whereas when you're in Toronto and you're trying to compete for for dates to play home games with the Leafs and the Raptors, and you have to make time. You have to give way to concerts a lot of the time too. So they were third or fourth or fifth in line when it came to picking dates. So it gives obviously the Rock an opportunity to play a lot more like weekend home games when people can watch, and like they're really going to get like kind of their choice of dates. They're going to pay less to lease the arena. And then it allows them, obviously, because it's a bit of a smaller community, to really get involved in the lacrosse community down there. So I think it's a really good move. Obviously, everyone in Hamilton is very happy about it. Let me tell you. I know a lot of people already started looking at season tickets. They sold more season tickets in Hamilton than they ever sold in Toronto, like year to year. So the community is really getting behind it, which is really good to see. And it's really exciting. It's really exciting to see the pro lacrosse come to Hamilton, back to Southern Ontario. Because another fun fact, many people don't know that the Toronto Rock originally started as the Ontario Raiders. And they drafted Colin Doyle as a rookie as their first ever, or one of their first round draft picks. And they played in Hamilton, and they were based out of Hamilton. So, and then they moved to Toronto. So it's good to see it kind of comes full circle, comes back, they're coming back to Hamilton. And it's really exciting. But yeah, it was cool to be tracking that as it happened.
Yeah, I agree with you. Like